Dr. Mitra received a Bachelor of Science from Cornell University and a PhD in cell biology from Stanford University Medical School. Her research has been funded by the National Institutes of Health and the American Cancer Society. Plus, she's published in prestigious journals such as Science and the Journal of Cell Biology. Mitra is an author who's passionate about educating people on how to take control of their own health. She's written 2 award-winning books, both available on Amazon. Dr. Ray is fiercely committed to being a trusted guide for those who love life, those who want to be fit and healthy, and those who want to live to dance at their grandchildren's wedding. With over 30 years' experience, Mitra is a campaigner, often invited as keynote speaker at global events, including one coming up we're going to tell you about. Her mission and commitment are to educate and inspire people about how plant-based whole foods create simple, sustainable benefits to mental health, clarity, and vitality. Welcome, Mitra. We're thrilled to have you with us.
Thank you so much. It's really lovely to be here, Claudine.
Now, our chat today is coinciding with the launch tomorrow of the biggest lifestyle medicine summit of the year. Yeah. So this event has some of the world's leading holistic health practitioners and educators. Can you tell us more about this event?
Yes. Well, it's really about lifestyle medicine. It's sort of an enough is enough kind of a movement, and exactly what you were saying, empowering people with the knowledge that they need to know to be their own health advocate. I think that's probably the primary purpose of this event. And you'll learn about nutrition, you'll learn about neuroemotional health, you'll learn about stress, you'll learn stress management, you'll learn from different perspectives how to take better care of yourself without all the jargon. And the talks will be sort of TED Talk style, short little TED Talks, so hopefully easy for everyone to understand, whether you're a health provider or you're just a health lover, you just want to take better care of yourself. It's really aimed at helping people empower themselves.
Fantastic. I'll be signing up for that. In fact, I'll do that as soon as we're done. But I think, and obviously we'll put the registration on our site and we'll guide our audience to that registration. Now, if we can pick your brain a little bit more, now you speak of making peace with our microbiome. Though to do that, it's important to understand what it is, right? So, yeah. And how it affects our health. So could you explain it for us?
Yes, well, since 2007, we started to turn biology upside down on its head. There's a new biology in town, and we're realizing that, wow, when you think of us as human beings, less than 10% of our cells are human cells. The rest are bacteria, protozoa, fungi, all these little microorganisms that live inside us. And the largest concentration of microorganisms, especially bacteria, on the planet is in our intestines. And that is what we call our gut microbiome. Technically speaking, microbiome means the genetic component of all the DNA of all that microbiota. The microbiota refers to the actual organisms, and then the microbiome is the DNA of all those organisms. And through genetic sequencing, advancements in genetic sequencing, we realized these creatures that we never saw, we identified through seeing their genes, that they live there. And now we're realizing, wow, there's such a diversity. And diversity is the key to good health. That's the other really important aspect of the microbiome. When we look at the microbiome, when we did the genetic sequencing of, when we did the genetic sequencing of human genome, we were all excited. We thought we could trace every disease to a particular gene, but that it didn't turn out to be the case. In fact, we only have about 25,000 genes. So just to put that in perspective, an earthworm has 100,000 genes. So why is an earthworm more complicated than we are? No, most of our genetic material is to put our physical body together mostly, but the real work, the real workhorse of our body is the microbiome. The bacteria that are in our gut are doing most of the work for us, digesting our food. And so we have to have the right bacteria in our gut. And that's really the big picture to really begin to appreciate.
Yeah, it's fabulous what you're all actually uncovering. And of course, the microbiome, our gut is, associated with our brain activity and how healthy we are. So it's wonderful that we're starting to learn this now, right? So by now, of course, I think we understand deep down that food is medicine, or more accurately, preventative medicine. And of course, there are sadly diseases and things that we can get along the way, regardless of what we do. But we seem to be looking for deeper nutrition through supplements as well. My question is, do you endorse this practice? And if so, why? And why can't we get enough from the food if we're eating well?
Yes, that's a really great question. And most people that study nutrition, and I used to be this way, are against supplementation, because it's true. When you take a vitamin supplement, it's mostly expensive urine. For one thing, the microbiota in your gut don't recognize it. You really can't digest it. So these hard pills that we take, maybe a little bit of the surface comes off, but in the acidity of the stomach. But other than that, it's not bioidentical most of the time. Some of them get a little bit fancier, but the reality is that it's not food. However, having said that, I do endorse a particular line of whole food nutritional products that have clinical research behind them. I endorse them for two reasons. Conceptually, it's a great idea. It's actually whole food nutrition. They capture the entire fruit and vegetable, which is great because when we eat an orange, we don't eat the skin of that orange. So it's really great when they can capture all these parts that have even more nutrition than what we would get daily. Secondly, they have a lot of research behind them, clinical research behind them. So I know it's not just garbage. So that's why I do endorse a particular line of supplementation. But in general, I don't believe in, it's interesting, like you might need a little bit of iron here and there. Let's say women during menses, you might take some extra iron supplementation because you lose so much blood, or a woman loses so much blood. But on the other hand, you don't want to take calcium supplementation. So it gets a little confusing when it comes to isolated nutrients. And that's when you really need to seek out getting a blood test, talking to maybe a naturopathic doctor or somebody who really understands these more subtle details about nutrition. But the general approach is really to increase the number and variety of fruits and vegetables in your diet. And because of that, this particular line of supplements that I recommend is really like a food supplement that increases the number of plant nutrients that you're exposed to daily, which does have a long-term impact and even a short-term impact.
Yeah. It's a very confusing and minefield of health, really. It really is. Yeah. Now, you're an advocate for us to consume more plant-based food. Yes. Is this an environmental position or a personal health one? What's your position?
It's a personal health one first and foremost, and then it happens to have environmental and animal health. Those are bonuses in my mind. Of course, I'm very environmentally conscious, but I also would be open to eating animal products if I thought they, maybe here and there, if I thought they provided some nutritional goodness that my body needed.
Yeah.
That is not the case. The more I've looked, the deeper I've done a deep dive on this topic for decades. And initially I thought that there were certain things I was confused, like most people are, about protein. The requirement for protein is the biggest confusion that people have. It's just not true. The last thing we need to worry about is protein content. That's just not an issue in my mind. If you eat plants, you'll get plenty of protein. Most people don't realize, even iceberg lettuce calorie for calorie has more protein than steak. Now you have to eat a lot of lettuce to get the same calories.
Yes.
But the good news is you can eat a lot more plants, and you won't, because your body will be satisfied sooner. But it's really important for us to understand that plants do provide us with pretty much everything we need.
So yeah, as you say, you raise the protein point, which I think is must be one of the biggest issues. It's certainly one for me. As I said, I was diagnosed with a number of things, including type 2 diabetes last year, which wasn't a surprise, to be honest. It's in my family. But, and my concern is that I'm not going to get enough protein if I convert to a fully plant-based diet. Are there any particular elements that provide more protein?
Well, if you eat the trick again is to eat a variety. When I give my lectures, I show a slide where we're comparing 500 calories of animal-based foods, like a little bit of chicken, beef, that kind of stuff, compared to 500 calories of, I don't know, tomatoes, beans, plants, basically. And you see in the table that the protein content is the same.
Really?
The protein content is the same, which I think surprises. In fact, I have to tell you, you can't be embarrassed about this, because I'm a Stanford Medical School educated biochemist, and I didn't know that. I just kind of bought into the urban myth that everybody eats protein, right? It's just the biggest urban myth. And I never thought to look at the numbers. And when I actually saw the numbers, and I first read it in the China study, I thought to myself, where have I been I've been under a rock all this time, because plants just have protein. And then I thought about it, like, of course they have protein, because protein means they're enzymes that do most, everything that's living has protein in it. What do proteins do in our body? They're either structural, but mostly they're enzymes that catalyze reactions. Okay. And so this protein is also in plants. Just because plants don't move doesn't mean they don't do work. They do photosynthesis. They do biochemical work. Any living thing has protein in it. If you eat anything that lives, they all have similar protein, because it's a living organism.
So maybe it's just the better marketing on the meat side.
It is absolutely marketing.
I wanted to pick your brain about these things. And while we're on the topic of food, there's a number of, conflicting information going around. There's a lot of conflicting information going around about things like soy, for example. Yes. I have drunk soy for a long time. And of course, then suddenly I'm told that it's the worst thing on the planet. It's an endocrine disruptor. It's this, it's that. What's your position on soy?
Soy is, first of all, so beneficial for us. There's several ways to look at it. If you are thinking about protein, for instance, soy is very digestible protein. It's a really good source of protein. It has there's something called PDSAS, which stands for Protein Digestibility Corrected Amino Acid Score. It's a mouthful, but as a perfect score is 1, and the closest thing to 1 is soy. It's better than beef or chicken or any typical source that people would go to. So that's the number one thing to think about. Secondly, the phytoestrogens in soy, I could show you publication after publication showing that it prevents prostate cancer in men, breast cancer, and uterine cancer, basically hormone-related organs. Our sexual reproductive organs can get cancer because of these things called SERMs, like they're selective estrogen receptor modulators. Basically, what these phytoestrogens do is, if you've got too much estrogen in the body, the plant estrogens, phyto meaning plant, the plant estrogens in the soy will block your estrogen receptors, so too much estrogen can't harm you. Okay, so for instance, you won't trigger cancer,
Right.
Estrogen related cancers. Okay, if you're not making enough estrogen, it can come in and save the day. So the phytoestrogens have this ability to help you this way or that way, depending if you don't have enough estrogen or if you have too much estrogen, which for women
it regulates that.
It's a regulator. So, and that's what helps prevent these hormone related cancers. And even for young girls, they have seen that prepubescent girls that are exposed to soy early in life tend to have fewer health challenges, especially hormone related health challenges down the road. So, and then this whole mythology about, men having boobs and all of that,
Yes, that's right.
That is like, I don't even know where the source is, other than the only thing I can think of is the whey protein industry. So whey protein, what is whey protein? Basically, when they started making cheese, concentrated the fat out of the milk to make cheese, they threw away a lot of, casein and whey. Then the food industry decided, well, we can just market that. So we'll just create a marketing campaign around whey protein and say, build big muscles with whey. So it's marketing, not science. So then the whey industry was doing rather well. And then all of a sudden soy was brought in as a plant alternative. And that's when these mythologies came about that, oh, you can't do soy, you'll have, because it's got phytoestrogens, they just played off of that, like men will get boobs and all of that.
Yeah.
It's complete and utter nonsense. Otherwise, everybody, all the men in China would have breasts. I mean, I don't know.
Well, that's right. You've got China, Japan, that whole region.
Yeah, right.
Are huge, soy consumers.
Right.
And I don't think we've seen anything like that out of there, right? And the Japanese could be some of the healthiest, apart from the smoking and everything. It can be some of that.
Yeah, they don't, when they're right, until they come to the United States, and then that's when
and Australia, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. That too. So the Western world, we just are really bought into this concept that soy is bad and beef is good and chicken is good and fish is good. No, not so much.
Not so much. Okay. Wow. You've debunked a fairly huge myth there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we talked about the fact that it's a good soy is good for us. What about you talked about as for older women specifically. So it really just helps us regulate. That's probably one of the primary benefits of that. It helps us regulate our estrogen. And yeah. Okay.
But if you want to build muscle, it's, as I said, that PD-SAS means that you are going to have a really great again, I don't worry about protein much, but literally plant-based athletes have leaner muscle, and they see, when I've talked to bodybuilders who have switched to a plant-based diet, they say it's so much easier for them to stay lean and have much better muscle definition with plant-based proteins like soy than when they were eating animal products. Because the animal products, you get the protein, but you also get 9 times more fat. And I don't care if you're talking chicken, fish, meat, you get 9 times more fat. And this is saturated fat that's going to clog up your arteries. So
there's so much isn't there? So when you talk about a plant-based diet, you really do mean a vegan diet, not vegetarian.
No, in fact, one of the things I would say, a vegetarian diet where people are consuming dairy and gluten, like pasta and things like that, too many grains and too much like cheese. That diet is actually worse in my mind than somebody who eats broccoli and steak. Sort of the paleo or the keto.
Yeah.
Like in some ways, I'd rather see somebody eat a small piece of animal product and lots of vegetables than pasta with cheese on it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that makes perfect sense, really. Yeah. I mean, we know that the carbs, those carbs, certainly from where I sit,
Yeah.
Absolutely no good for certainly the sugar balancing and all of those sorts of things. And as we get older, that just gets harder, right? So,
and the dairy is the #1 promoter of cancer. Cheese is,
really?
yes.
So then where do we get our calcium?
That's a really great question. Okay, so leafy greens are our best source of calcium. Leafy greens, green vegetables are your best source of calcium. Plants are your best source of calcium, and amongst plants, leafy greens are your best source of calcium. Now, nobody's actually calcium deficient. They deplete calcium because of an acidic diet. Now, this is a little bit of trickiness, so let me take it step by step. What plants are all helpful in making the body alkaline. They keep your body alkaline as it's supposed to be. Processed foods and animal products, all animal products are acidic. So people think like citrus fruits are acidic. It's not what you put in your mouth, but rather what's called the renal acid load. Like, what does your urine look like? What is the acid load of your urine after you've eaten it? Citrus fruits do not have a renal acid load, okay? So plants make you alkaline, animal products and processed foods make you acidic. So when you are acidic, the body goes, how am I going to neutralize this acidity? So it's looking for something to alkalinate the body. The biggest source happens to be a salt. Stay with me with this, a salt called calcium bicarbonate, which is in your bones. Okay. The body's not looking for calcium. It's looking for the bicarbonate. It's kind of like sodium chloride. It's like there's a positive ion and a negative ion. The calcium is the positive ion. The bicarbonate is the negative ion. Okay. It's kind of like if you have indigestion, you might, an old solution was like a little bit of baking soda, which is also a bicarbonate salt. Well, we want the bicarbonate. So the body goes, let's release some calcium bicarbonate from the bones, and it uses the bicarbonate to alkalinate the body, and the calcium ions just go out the urine. Right. So it's like a bank account where you keep taking calcium out, and you're not eating leafy greens to put it back in. And you keep eating acidic products. Yeah. And then you think taking calcium is going to help. No, that's just going to go right through you. That's not going to get to your bones. Right. So you need leafy greens, and you also need exercise, because our bones don't have, veins and arteries delivering nutrients. So it's the push and pull of ligaments against bone that signals the bones to take up calcium. So you've got to eat it from leafy greens. Yeah. You've got to stop the, calcium depleting foods that are making you acidic in the first place. So cut back on the animal products and the processed foods that are making you acidic. Eat alkaline foods that are going to give you the calcium you need, and then exercise to make sure your bones take it up.
And that's a well-rounded, holistic approach to keep us because ultimately it comes down to our bones, and making sure we keep them as strong, bones and joints as strong as possible, to obviously avoid falls and certainly the damage we so that's really the whole.
And it's reversible. Like I've helped women in their 80s and 90s reverse their bone density by taking this advice.
Yeah, I had a chat the other day to a professor about the same thing. She said the same thing, reversing osteoarthritis. And so very interesting. Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. All right. Well, we covered that. So look, biologically it is more difficult, and maybe I'm going to say biologically, but you may say something else. It is more difficult for women of a certain age to lose weight than it once was when we were younger. Why is that the case, and why is it? How do we work through how do we make a successful approach to dropping those extra kilos to stay healthy as we're older?
Well, this is going to take us back to the microbiota discussion. Yeah. Because what's happening over time is a serious amount of what's called dysbiosis, which is having the wrong bacteria in the gut. Where do they come from? Again, same source, animal products and processed foods. The animal products, and now how truthful do you want me to be here? Because this is where the rubber really meets. Okay. So they did a study where this was published, by the way, in the top, science journal, which is Nature. They did a study where they gave one population just meat to eat, okay, and another population just plants to eat. So just meat or just plants, okay? And they saw dramatic changes in the microbiota, dramatic changes. The meat-eating population had just a bunch of parasites, basically, okay? And the plant eaters had the healthy bacteria started eating. So I tell people, when you're eating, you want to think about who you're feeding. Are you feeding, if you really think about it, animal products, we're eating dead flesh. So what does that mean? That means that there's flesh-eating bacteria and worms and other, scary microorganisms. And even if you cook it, there's larvae and things that you can't kill everything 100%. And on top of that, you still have a little bit all the time from just the air you're breathing. So so it doesn't take much. And if they can eat a bunch of meat, they grow and multiply. And not only that, they change your craving, and then you decide you're a meat eater and you can't live without it because they are dictating your taste buds. They're really clever. They control neurotransmitters. That gut-brain connection is very real. So you go like, I don't care what this short brown Indian woman is telling me. I'm a carnivore, because that's your bacteria talking, because you've been feeding those parasites for so long. They're calling the shots. You're thinking you're, adult human being that's reading things and coming to your own conclusions. You're not. You're totally being controlled by these parasites that you've been feeding. So you have to go through a little bit of suffering if you really want to change up the game, and you have to starve them out.
So it's another withdrawal process.
It is a withdrawal process to kill them, by starving them. And that's why those people that ate the plants, but the good news is you can turn it around really fast. Within even 3 days, you change quite a bit. If you eat, and the best thing to do is fiber rich foods, where you're crunching on the broccoli, chewing on, the fiber. Fiber feeds the good guys. Okay. Yeah. Fiber is the key. Not fiber supplements, like fiber,
And not fiber as in bread or
no, I'm talking
vegetable fiber. Yeah.
Yeah. Even the skin of apples, that kind of stuff. Like, plants, all plants have fiber. Animal products have no fiber. We have no business eating anything that doesn't have fiber, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So when we eat things with fiber, we're feeding the good guys. And then the first 3 days, there's a battle between the good guys and the bad guys. And that's the first 3 days are the hardest. And I tell people, you just have to figure out how to get through those first 3 horrible days. After that, you start to feel better and better and better. And pretty soon you're light on your feet. Your age doesn't matter. I'll tell you what, I have to sit there and go, really? I'm 57. Like, I don't feel 57. I just don't.
Oh, I do at times.
I have no medications. And that wasn't, when I became a plant eater, and I say plant eater because when you say vegan, I'm not a vegan junk food eater either.
Yeah.
There's a lot of vegan junk food. It's like there's kale really and there's kale chips. And I'm like, yeah. Okay, kale chips are better than probably potato chips or, with a lot of chemicals on them. But nonetheless, I like to eat real kale, and so that's the important part. Like, are you crunching? As soon as you start processing, you start to degrade the fiber content also. And here's the good news. 10 grams of fiber today will increase your biodiversity tomorrow by more than 10%.
Oh, wow.
And that's the name of the game, is biodiversity.
So the impact is almost immediate, right?
Yes. other than that first 3 days of
Yeah.
fighting between the two camps. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, wow. It's extraordinary. And obviously, you have spent a lot of time over the last 20 years. And I understand that perhaps you even discovered some of your own health issues, which led you on this path to learn more about it. Is that
Yes.
something you can share with us?
Yes. My biggest challenge in my 20s was that I had a neck spasm that got worse and worse over time, especially hovering over a microscope doing research. And I was at Stanford Medical School, and you'd think somebody would have given me, a better solution. But basically, they told me to take ibuprofen all the time, gave myself an ulcer in my 20s, excuse me. And I also wasn't eating well. And it's like what you don't know that you don't know. Like I was drinking probably 20 cups of coffee a day. My sleeping habits were horrible. I never thought about all this stuff. I was just married to my research. I was married to my science, and I just did in fact, I had a little radiation badge, and if it was hot, as we say it, then that meant I was working hard. So here I am, like radioactive, messing up my thyroids completely. I totally messed up my thyroids from my days in the laboratory. So those were my health challenges. Kind of, technically, I guess my naturopath says that when I'm really stressed out, I show symptoms of Hashimoto's.
Right.
But most of the time I don't. And I've never taken anything for it, because all I know is, just stop being so stressed and start, focusing on sleep and hydration and all that stuff. Right. So, and don't eat junk food. So over time, and it didn't happen overnight for me. I think we set really high expectations. I think if you just start with, some people just start with like meatless Mondays, I don't care where you start, how you do it. But if you just start to push yourself, I believe the 3-day thing is probably the fastest way to try it. But I've made mistakes before. I tried to be a vegetarian before, but I didn't know what I was doing. And I was eating a lot of pasta and, the comfort foods.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the comfort foods are not good either.
No.
So it's taken time. And I think the biggest change that happened for me was to realize that when I eat plants, I just stop getting even colds and flus, and if I, the only thing that messes me up now is if I don't get enough sleep because I'm traveling. Yeah. Or I'm very excited because I'm going to some conference or something, which just happened last week,
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I had a similar thing with the thyroid, and it was, I had hemithyroidectomy, and there's no doubt in my mind that's just because of years and years of stress and not being, so it's just important. All right, so we'll get off that a little bit, but I am curious to learn a little bit more about, just very quickly, you wrote and released a book back in 2002 called From Here to Longevity. Can you tell us about that, but also, as science constantly evolving, how much of it remains relevant?
Right. Well, so much of it was ahead of its time. And I still talk about most of the things I talk about, like environmental toxins and heart coherence and all these things. But when it came to diet, that was my protein days. That's when I was still concerned with protein, until I read the China study. I met T. Colin Campbell. Then I dug in deeper. I went to different resources, really dug into, is this plant-based thing real? And, it was kind of embarrassing for me to say, I wrote a book, and then I stopped publishing it because I thought, oops, I changed my mind. And, I was just talking to somebody today that wants to write a book on gut microbiome. And they said, it's never going to get published because the science keeps changing. And I realized, like, it's true when it comes to diet and nutrition, I know that I'm 100% sure that I'm never going to change my mind about eating plants is the way to go. So my second book is a lot more relevant, because it really is, that's when I stopped publishing that and quickly wrote the other one, because I realized, and everybody was a little bit nervous, like, are you kidding? I love that book. And I said, yes, it's got a lot of great chapters, other than the part where I talk about protein.
That's the thing, isn't it? We evolved throughout life, and but your second book, just quickly, of course, that you're referring to is Do You Have the Guts to Be Beautiful?
Yes.
So again, just a little intro about that.
Yes. So I met Dr. Daniels when I went to a retreat to learn more about plant-based nutrition. And she talked a lot about, clearing up your skin through all the things that I talk about in the book. And I thought, people just don't want to be told to change their diet, but maybe I'll take the vanity approach, And I realized, wow, I'm a little vain too. I mean, I don't want to look old before my time either. And so I started listening, and I took copious notes as she was talking. And then I tried out everything she said, and I just cranked out that book in about 3 months. I put her name on it because most of those ideas came from her. But then I researched them myself, and I thought, this is really great. This is a really simple book. It's not too, like my first one had all these references, much more scientific as far as the writing goes, whereas this one was just, here's a much simpler way to live, basically.
Yeah. Right. Well, and that is what we could all do with, to be honest, a much simpler life and a much healthier life. Dr. Mitra Ray, I thank you so much for joining us on Pure Health Hub, and I hope we get to do it again. But as we were talking about earlier in our chat, the event, the biggest lifestyle medicine summit of the year, commences tomorrow, Australia's time, and it's bringing together the world's leading holistic practitioners and educators. So thank you. I'll look forward to being a part of that program, and we will put we'll put the link up there to register on our site. So
yes,
thanks, Mitra.
I encourage everyone to attend that. It's going to be just so much great information, and I'm getting ready to speak on Wednesday.
Yes, so. Well, you've got your starting and ending, aren't you, really? First day and last day. All right, well, I'll be sure to catch those ones, as well as all of these, a number of these other esteemed speakers. Thanks, awesome. Mitra.
Thanks so much, Claudine. It was really a pleasure.